If I believe there's a reason for this pain I'm going through, if I believe that leaving me was all that you could do, if I believe that I can feel you by my side, I'll make it through the night. If I believe that time will teach me how to find my way, if I believe that broken hearts grow stronger every day, if I believe that now you're dancing across the sky, I just might get by. If I believe that memories won't always hurt this much, if I believe that I will see your face again, I can wait till then. If I believe I'll hold you in my arms again, I can wait. I know that I can wait. I can wait till then. I can wait till then.
Good evening. Welcome to the SOA show. My name is Joanne, and our guest tonight is Bob McWatters.
Hi, Joanne.
How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I think this is my third or maybe fourth time on.
I think it's your fourth time.
Fourth, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a
Because you have
veteran
an awful
now.
lot to say. Yes, you are. You're a veteran. And Bob actually was one of my speakers for our vigil, and that's why I have our vigil video up there, because I want everybody that didn't have the opportunity to see it be able to see their loved ones tonight.
Yeah, that's nice.
And I really would like to talk. You had some interesting stuff to say that night. Interesting stuff. How's that?
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're going through, I think, a real crisis and epidemic in this country. And I spoke a little about, you know, government and universities and private entities are all data-driven. When you have roughly 200 people dying a day from opioid addiction and heroin addiction, we need to do better. You know, that's absolutely unacceptable. And it's, you know, we spend money on a lot of things in this country, but we got our young men and women, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, dying every day, and we don't have a handle on it.
No.
You can throw money at it, you can try to rush your way out of it, but that's not going to solve it. It's going to take a real team approach, and it's going to take a lot of hard effort from, you know, government officials, private entities, families, and this, I certainly am not going to sit here and say I have the answers, but what we're doing now, I think, is insufficient, and we can do a lot better in this country.
Absolutely. You know, I remember 4 or 5 years ago when we went to D.C., and when we came back, they had round table discussions at the Edward M. Kennedy Library, and one of the things that was said to us, the first one I had gone to, which was just after that, is that D.C. and government were not talking about opioids at all, which to me was devastating, because losing a son and knowing how long he fought a battle that the doctors had actually prescribed to him. You know, it's not acceptable. And it was the promotion, I think it was the promotion, is that the pharmaceutical companies were supposed to primarily use that opioid for people that were dying of cancer to give them better life quality before the end of their life. You don't give it to a 21-year-old that has a motorcycle accident.
No. I think what happened, from what little history I know, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, they convinced the surgeons in the AMA to provide the OxyContin to, you know, surgery patients and patients in palliative care who are at the end of their lives for hospice. And I think when this epidemic really got a stranglehold in this country is when they convinced PCPs and dentists to stop prescribing the prescriptions, and I think that's when it really escalated, and the end result is we're having 200 people in this country a day die, which I go back again and I say it's unacceptable. You need prevention. There's that stigma out there that, you know, I don't even know what the term is now. They change it. Now they call it a substance disorder or addicts. But these are our neighbors, our cousins, our friends that are dying. And we really don't have any plan in place. I know recently the federal government just allocated about $400 million, of which I think Massachusetts is getting $12 million for services and treatment, and that's what we need to do, because you know, this is such a scourge right now in this country. We're losing a generation.
Absolutely.
And our mortality rate because of this addiction, opioid addiction and deaths, has now decreased because of this. So, I mean, we need to get the best and brightest minds in rooms to figure this out and how we can stop. I mean, one death is enough, but 200 a day is...
It's outrageous.
Totally.
No, it totally is amazing.
And I certainly don't have the answers, but it starts with prevention. And I'll tell you a little story. My grandmother, I can remember my Irish immigrant, I always say that, my grandmother, God rest her soul, I had a tooth pulled when I was probably a teenager, I think so. Now, she wasn't educated. She maybe went to the 8th grade in this country and worked hard. She had the sense to say to me after I came back from the dentist, when I think I had Vicodin and a Percocet, I forget what it was. She said, "You're not going to take those goofballs because you'll get addicted." Now, here's a woman who wasn't educated, who knew better, knew that medication was addictive, and told me, "Don't take that." That was always ingrained and embedded in my brain, and I was always afraid. I mean, we don't have to, like, put fear into people, but these are some of the things we need to get out to students and young people in schools. Now, and I'm not going to besmirch the AMA or doctors in this country, but most of them don't know much about addiction or nutrition, especially addiction. A lot of doctors today, if you go, and I've seen this in the court system, if you went to them and you told them you had a backache or a headache, they'd write your prescription temporarily to try to help you. But I think, and that's all changing now because they're really cognizant of what's been transpiring, what's going on. But, you know, doctors should tell you, look, if I can't treat it medically, why don't you consider alternatives, acupuncture, chiropractor, or go to a gym, exercise. These are the things we need to now start implementing. You know, we got to treat the addicts, we got to get them stable, and when someone's addicted to a drug, research says it takes about 2 years for your brain chemistry just to get back to being semi-normal. So, you know, the old adage is when someone comes home inebriated or drunk, you can't really talk sense. Same thing with an addict. It's going to take a longer period of time to get them in treatment, to get them away from that drug, to get them away from, you know, the urges and, you know, when they want to take the drug again. That brain chemistry, your brain has to heal. And researchers are now saying it takes about 2 years. So that's a process.
Definitely. And the adult mind is not totally developed until you're 26. So if that's the case, you know, you have all these kids that started drugs early,
Yep.
some from peer pressure, some from being prescribed by doctors as well.
You know, the one thing I wanted to say it at the vigil, but when you get up, I didn't have anything prepared. I just went up and spoke.
Oh, you did a great job.
Thank you. The one thing I wanted to say is, please, I implore everyone, and I implore everyone who's watching tonight, young, middle-aged, old, do not take opioids or any of these drugs recreationally, because in the long term, this can cause addiction, this can cause death. A lot of these drugs today are treated with fentanyl. Now, I looked at some statistics today. Massachusetts opioid deaths are down a little. However, fentanyl deaths are up 90%.
Right.
So it's coming down a little on the opioids, but on the fentanyl, it's going up. So the crisis is still there. So anyone who's at a party, who was out with friends and who has a chance to take any of these pills, do not do it. Do not do it recreationally, because the other day I sent you that obituary.
Yes.
The woman, I believe, from Vermont.
Yeah.
And her mother said in the obituary, or said in the article, her daughter was on spring break and started taking the pills recreationally. And that's what happens. It's a merry-go-round. It's off to the races. So do not take it recreationally.
Well, Frankie had a motorcycle accident at 21, and they put him on OxyContin. He did at the time ask the nurse if it was addictive, but he didn't give him any information on that. So for 12 weeks he was on it to begin with. So at that point he was totally addicted, and he fought a 10-year battle. I don't know how many times he went in and out of detox. I even sectioned him. I sectioned him with his asking me to do that, so that he would be in treatment longer. He personally knew that he needed more time than just a short visit to detox, but he didn't go into aftercare. I mean, yeah, he did not go for aftercare, and I think that's very, very important that he should have done that.
When you become addicted and they're treating you, when physicians are treating you, the term is medical assisted treatment.
Right.
Doctors are supposed to provide counseling and/or have someone else provide counseling once a week for an hour.
Right.
And statistics show right now that's not happening.
Column Health does do that.
Okay. But I think generally most of them aren't doing that, which they should. And the other thing is, yeah, this isn't like alcohol where you can just wean yourself off. It has to be done medically and done under a physician's care. And you know, you can do it with methadone and Suboxone, and all the medical. There's like 3
Fentanyl.
types.
Wait a minute. It's methadone, Vivitrol is what I was trying to say.
Vivitrol, yep, the shot, and then the last one is naloxone. They're medical terms I can't pronounce, but there are 3 methods for medical assisted treatment to help any individual who've had opioid addiction, and it has to be monitored by a doctor and a physician to do that. And I don't think it's being done in a systematic way, and it should be.
Right. Well, see, I think that right now with Suboxone, they went from the pill to strips, because they were abusing Suboxones as well. They took off the coating and screened it and whatever. They could do the same thing as they did with the opioids. There is supposedly, when I went to D.C., I don't know if you know that, Pat, in October.
Yeah, I
there
think
was a walk.
Yeah.
And when I was there, we were actually out in front of the Shackler Gallery with pictures of our children. There must have been at least 200 mothers there. And we found out at that point that the Purdue Pharmaceutical has just recently made an antidote for the opioid. And I'm saying they're going to, the FDA is going to approve that so that they can make billions off of the epidemic they already caused.
Which they've made billions on.
And I said they should donate it. Donate the antidote to the people that are suffering.
Yeah, it's just...
That won't happen.
Yeah, it won't. I mean, we're making some strides, but it's still, again, I go back to data-driven analysis. Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out. Ask the police and firemen, especially the firefighters, who get calls numerous times, weeknights and weekends, where they're narcanning, addicts 4, 5, 6 at a time, just to bring them back. So, and today I was walking and I was thinking maybe, and you can't really force people to do this, but maybe when someone gets Narcaned, they should almost be coerced into like a detox so they can start some form of treatment and then, get the help they need. But it's difficult because once your brain chemistry changes, all you want is that high and that drug.
Absolutely. Actually, if 911 is called, they bring them to the hospital.
Yes.
I thought there was a 72-hour...
I read something today that was pretty scary in Boston. The 3,500 ambulance runs they had last year,
my God.
1,900 of them were drug overdoses, which they had to administer Narcan. That's a pretty substantial number. So, we know we have this epidemic and a crisis, and we still, I feel as, one individual worked in the system, I still don't feel we have a real handle in how to treat this. I mean, we have the knowledge and mechanism in this country to do it, but it's not being done right now. I mean, it is being done in pockets. I don't want to criticize anyone who works in the field, but we need to do more.
Oh, definitely. We do. It's huge.
Yep.
And we don't have, actually, we have a lot of people training to do jobs and to work in treatment centers, and actually, I don't think that we have the amount of numbers of people that we need to be able to help with this epidemic. I don't think it's an epidemic anymore. I think it's a pandemic.
It could
tell
be.
You the truth.
Canada's having a major problem. I know Europe's having a problem with it.
We're number one. And we don't want to be number one in that category.
I gave you that stat one time. The United States comprises roughly right under 5% of the world's population, but we take 80% of prescribed opioids in the world.
Right.
So we got a country running around that's stoned and out of it and addicted,
right.
Which is not a good stat. That's
No,
not a stat that I'm happy to announce. But so 80% of the world's prescription opioids are being written in the United States, and we only comprise 5% of the world population.
Well, most of it started in Florida.
Yes.
There was a drug clinic, pain clinic on every corner. And do you know
that doctor's in jail, by the way. There was a piece, either 60 Minutes or 2020, and he got sentenced because a lot of people died and overdosed. And to this day, he still doesn't think what he did was wrong, which is remarkable. I can't understand that.
It's amazing. It totally is. And they're still having lots of problems down in Florida with their drug problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but a few times I've had to take, the bus or the train to different areas. And when I did, I was watching people, and they were nodding out.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were standing and almost nodding out, leaning up against a pole. And a lot of people don't see this. They just walk by and they don't realize. And I think the reason why I knew more about it is because I knew about the opioid and opened my eyes to a lot of things, to actually watch and see who's out there. Wait to see if one person was nodding and he got a phone call, and I said, oh, good, it woke him up. Because once you know, what it does is it shuts you down. It shuts down your breathing and
Yeah, it'll shut
everything,
you
and then
down your breathing.
Yep. You forget to breathe, and then that's it. You know?
Yeah, the heroin, pure heroin won't, unless you take an overdose or more heroin, typically won't kill you. It's the fentanyl, which really diminishes and decreases the breathing, and then your organs shut down, and that's how you overdose. And that's when the Narcan, when they administer that, gets you breathing again and wakes you up. So, but it's the fentanyl. And the other thing that I read recently too, and it's out a little, but if carfentanil starts being treated with these drugs, that is 10,000 times more potent than fentanyl. And that is actually, if people don't know, it's a animal tranquilizer.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, if that's laced with carfentanil, it's an automatic overdose and death.
Right. I don't even know if Narcan would be able to help anybody. That would.
I don't know. Yeah,
maybe
like
8 or 9
20
doses.
of them.
Who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah.
But no, carfentanil is coming in from China.
Yes.
I don't know if it's coming in from Mexico. I know that fentanyl is coming in from Mexico. But you know, I mean, we need to watch the borders better. What did they say? It came in. It wasn't FedEx. But it's amazing how things are getting through, even our mail system.
Yeah, they're pretty ingenious, these drug cartels and drug dealers.
Right. They want to.
There's a market, and they're going to get it in here, unfortunately.
Right. And we say, well, maybe.
It's a battle. It's a battle for federal authorities and
How do we
state
know
police.
that people are sending it over here because this is their way of getting rid of us?
Well, I
don't
hope
know.
not. I hope not.
I hope not too. But just think, it's really a crazy thought, but it could be possible.
Yep.
You know, I mean, why would they be setting fentanyl and carfentanil, knowing that a lot of people would be dying from it?
There's a market, and see, they cut it. They cut it and put in the heroin, but it's also being laced in cocaine and marijuana. And I mentioned to you before the show that some of my clients, when I drug tested them, they'd say, Bob, I'm only smoking marijuana. And I'd say, well, it's being laced with fentanyl. Or, you know, I only did a line of cocaine. I said, well, it's laced with fentanyl. Because we would do with the screens, and the cups would show what drugs would be positive. And 9 out of 10 times, it was both the drug they were taking and the fentanyl. So fentanyl's creeping into other drugs, and this is why we're seeing this is going to make this epidemic even worse.
Right. There was fentanyl in some, what is it? Not OxyContin. Percocets.
Yep.
And that was just recent. And I was just talking to Carrie Ann Cacabaro, and she said that she was trying to get in touch with Marion to tell her that this is happening with those.
D.A. Ryan. Yep.
Yeah. To let her know that it's showing up, because Marion will always mention when there's something out there that could affect the population.
Yes.
And
yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, and believe me, I'm not an expert, but I dealt with a lot of drugs. There's a lot of stuff on the black market that's not good right now.
Right. Well, the thing is, you've been a probation officer for 34 years, right?
Yes.
And was it always, not really always in the drug court, right?
No, drug court. When I first started, addicts and the mentally ill were put in jail, unfortunately, because the court we weren't equipped to deal with these types of issues and problems. And by the time they came into the system, they were really far gone. So the court was basically left with no alternative. Not that I'm saying it was right, but to incarcerate them. But I think over the years, as courts became open-minded and figured out that you just can't keep incarcerating someone who's an addict or mentally ill, because when they get out, they're going to have the same issue. So they transitioned and they became more transformative, and they started doing drug courts in lieu of incarcerating. They put them in programs in mental health instead of, again, incarceration. They had recovery courts, which is working, because you get the defendant treatment on medication, and they're stable. Are they absolutely 100% perfect? No, but at least you stabilize them and you keep them out of the system and you watch them and, you know, you make sure they see their counselor, you make sure they're taking their medication, you make sure they report to the judge and the probation officer, and, you know, it seems to be working. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than what the court used to do by incarcerating them.
Right. Well, I'm glad to see that. But as a matter of fact, now we're on the court system. How many people? What do you think the percentage would be for people that are in there for drug issues?
Drug or alcohol, over 80%.
Okay. So we have a huge population of people that should be treated and not behind bars.
Yeah, and I think the court's a lot more cognizant. Anytime in a police report where there's an alcohol or drug issue, most of the times the judges will either mandate or suggest, because we don't mandate drug court or recovery court, it's all voluntary. But on the other hand, if they're not interested in, you know, on the other end, it would be incarceration. So sometimes addicts, I mean, they're pretty shrewd and they know how the system works. They manipulate. So they'll do the drug court. But drug court is difficult. It's not easy.
No, but you know what's amazing? You're talking about drug court and recovery court. So there are two different kinds?
It's two different kinds, yeah.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Because I know that I have a friend from AdCare, his name is Dan O'Connor, and he said he didn't like the word drug court. He would like to see that recovery court, when you already have recovery court.
Recovery court, yeah. Well, Judge Schrager, as you know, when the trial court instituted a pilot program having mental health courts, she thought that was a stigma. And she felt that the recovery it's recovery session. She felt that would be a better name for the court instead of mental health court because of the stigma. And I agree with that. And a drug court, yeah, I mean, that would be sufficient too. But I think the bottom line is treatment versus incarceration.
Right.
That's the most important thing.
And you know, I do love that woman.
Yes.
No,
and she said, by the way, she will be coming on.
Very, very good. I can't wait.
She just got back from Portugal and Spain.
I think that it would be great for people to see how she is personally.
She's
talking
terrific.
to her.
She's compassionate. She's bright. She understands their pain. She speaks to them like you and I speak, and that's not typical in court because judges only want to speak to lawyers. Even if you're a pro se or represent yourself, they don't want to get into a big conversation. Judges talk to lawyers and vice versa. Lawyers talk to judges, and being a retiree of the court system, yeah, they'd speak to a court personnel, but when someone was pro se, they didn't have an attorney, they didn't have the same dialogue and understood the law like an attorney. So that's why attorneys, when you're in court, a judge would much rather prefer speaking to an attorney. But in the recovery session, the attorney's there, but as you witnessed, the judge does most of the talking to the participant in the recovery session, which is nice.
Well, I noticed that people felt very, very comfortable around her.
Yes.
Whereas most of the time when you go to court, everybody's just so frightened of what was going to happen.
I'll give you an example. Today in homeless court, one of the participants, when she come out, and he's long-term, he's an alcoholic, he's been on the street a long time, and when she comes into the session, he always screeches out something. He said, "Hey, Judge, you in a good mood today?" And she started laughing. She said, "I'm always in a good mood." But if you're in regular court, court officer would tell you to be quiet or even throw you out of the courtroom.
Right.
But in these courts, they kind of relax the guidelines and the protocol, and you know, it's more.
But doesn't it work?
It works.
Right.
It works.
When you show compassion and you're very human.
Right.
It makes them feel relaxed and they want to do well, not only for themselves, but for her.
I don't know where I saw it, but I was up in Maine 2 weeks ago, and someone said, you know, when you walk by someone homeless, say hi to them and ask them their name. I said, geez, I didn't think of that. So there was a guy panhandling at one of the lights, and I rolled the window down, and I said, you were a veteran, because he had the Marine. He said, yes, I was a Marine. My father was a Marine. So I said, what's your name? He said, Paul. We started conversing, And it was like, you know, he felt like he was a human being and he felt worthy. And I think that's what we do in the recovery session in a drug court and homeless court. The court is actually treating them not as like a defendant and someone who's vicious and mean. Yeah, there's that other aspect of court that we have to do that with the real hardened criminals. But the people who are sick, I think the court's become a lot more compassionate and is doing more transformative counseling and better methods in treating them instead of, you know, just placing them on probation and saying, here, all right, now you're on your own, go to your counselor. Now they're making sure they're in counseling and on their medication.
Right. Well, you know, I've been having just different individuals come on the show. And the other day I had...
I'm your best guest, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite guests. So I had Pierce Alberti. And Pierce is only 26 years old. And he helped open the Woburn Wellness. They just got an award for their...
Terrific.
For their facility. And the thing is, a lot of these places are starting to introduce a gym or yoga or meditation. And I think that's the route, because not only is medical assisted recovery or marijuana recovery, there's also, I feel that some people will let out their hostilities and their frustrations going to a gym. And to be able to, you know, be able to deal with things happening in your life every day, just getting rid of that stress.
Absolutely, that's true, because I remember when I was a young man, I'm a little older now, but when I was in my early 20s, I was lethargic, feeling run down, fatigued. It was when I first started working for DSS. I was a social worker.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I worked for them
He was also a social worker.
3 years.
That's good.
So I just didn't feel right. So I went to the doctor and he said, are you exercising? And I said, no. I said, I'm too tired. He said, start walking or running, you'll feel better. And after about a week, I was running then. I felt a lot better. He was right. So it gets the endorphins going, and, you know, instead of prescribing, it's, you know, there are times when you need medication to take the edge off when you're really stressed out, but not for long term. I mean, I had clients on Klonopin for years, and I would say to them, shame on your doctor. Go back and tell them you don't need it anymore. But you have to come off it medically. You just can't come right off it. You have to wean off it. But for doctors to prescribe that medication for years, that's unacceptable.
I agree. That's why I would like parents to actually ask the doctors, why are you prescribing this to my child? Or to me, for that fact. All right? I think that they overprescribe totally, and you know, it worries me. It really does worry me. And I said, we always said that parents should write a plan. Okay, you have a doctor, you have a dentist. Now, what if you're going to find out that your child is addicted? So what are you going to do? You really do have to sit down and do your homework about what's out there in case.
Yep.
Because there's the ARMS, which is a part of Mass General. It's for 12 to 17-year-olds. You know, go in and see what's available to you. And if you never use that plan, that's great. But you know, emotionally, you're going to be so upset about finding out your child's addicted that you're not going to be able to really think it through. And your doctor, a lot of the doctors created the problems. Are you going to go to a doctor and say, okay, so what are we going to do for addiction? A lot of them might not even know.
No, and it goes, and I'm not, listen, I'm not diminishing what doctors do and, you know, their medical background, but you're right, a lot of them aren't versed in addiction.
Right.
And it's just because they're not schooled on it. The same as nutrition. I was told by a physician who had on probation, they take one course on nutrition in medical school.
Really?
So, I mean, that's, you say to yourself, one course, but the thing is, it's easy today in our society, unfortunately. Everyone, when they go to the doctor, they think they're going to get a pill and they're going to feel better. That's not always the case.
Right.
I mean, I know one time I was probably suffering from low-level depression, and I went to my physician. This was a long time. I went to my physician, and he said to me, Bob, you're okay. Physically, you're fine. You're okay. Just relax and don't stress out. He put his hand on my shoulder, and the next day I felt a lot better. So we all need to be validated. We need that reassurances. And no, we all suffer from anxiety we get nervous, but you know, the quick fix is a pill, but that's not the issue. That's not the answer.
It isn't.
It's not the answer.
You know, it's funny. I went to a long time ago when actually I worked for Verizon for 28 years, and I became supervisor and manager, and they sent me to a lot of classes. And one of the classes I decided to go to was Dale Carnegie. And when you talk about people do like to hear their name. People like to know good things about themselves or hear good things about themselves. And then, you know, that's how I would do the approach being a supervisor. If you had to go and try to help someone overcome a problem they were having, you have to tell them the good things that they've done. And that let's try to work on this now. You know, because we're not all perfect.
No one is.
You know, so it works. You know, and out of 95% good, you always hear about the 5% negative. And the thing is, we need to hear more positive things.
Right.
Just like the news, isn't that the 5% negative most of the time? So we have to change the way we think. And let's be more positive about life and get away from the negative or to hear the gossip or the stigma. Why don't we, you know, like I said, my son was a great kid. Loved to smile, had a great time. I don't want him to be remembered as just being someone that was an addict, you know, and ended up dying.
He was worthy. He lived, yeah.
They're all worthy.
Yep, everyone is.
Right.
And that's why it's a shame today where people are overdosing in bathrooms, behind dumpsters, on ball fields. In fact, there was a young man who lived down the bottom of my street. He suffered for years with heroin addiction, and unfortunately he succumbed recently, and they found him in the bathroom in a hospital with a needle in his arm. And that in this day and age in this country, that should never happen.
Absolutely. You know, so I realize that they have their own stigma, and that's why they go and use alone. You know, Canada has the treatment centers.
Yeah.
And well, actually injection centers. And they asked me how I felt about it. In the beginning, Mike Connolly's office had called and asked my position on that. And I said to him that I really wasn't into, you know, injection centers. And then after I thought about it, I said to myself, wouldn't I rather have my son be alive? So if he was able to go to one of those facilities, then maybe he would be alive today. And that a lot of times they would talk to them about their addiction. It's not like they're just there to monitor the drug they're taking, but they're also educating and trying to help them like a recovery coach would. And then at that point, I changed my mind about how I felt about that.
I would be okay with it for short term. I would not want to see someone just languish and keep going to those, you know, facilities to inject the heroin or whatever the pharmaceutical. I think eventually, you're right, with treatment assistance and, you know, the help of getting off this drug, I think it's okay. I think anything short term is fine, but when you prolong it for a long time, you're just still not getting to the root of the problem.
Right.
You're just putting a Band-Aid on it.
But I'm really proud of a lot of the things that have happened in Massachusetts. First of all, there are a lot of different treatment centers available. There's also a lot of grief groups, and you know, because people need to talk.
You know, I thought about that today when I was walking, and I wanted to mention it in my speech at the vigil. You forget things. Yeah. But I think a lot of people in families who have lost a loved one should get involved, or even if they haven't, if the person's still actively using, go to Al-Anon or go to whatever recovery group you can. Be with other people who are suffering the same problems, and, you know, talk about it. Don't just stand still and just try to enable them, or you know, just try to do something that helps your own peace of mind. And I think there's a lot of help out there, and it's a struggle, and families suffer, and they need help. They need help.
I know that for a fact. But the thing is that a lot of times they're ashamed of what their child's doing, or their loved ones doing. And the thing is, don't be ashamed. It's not something that they wanted for themselves. It's something that started that they couldn't stop.
Here's another statistic I'll give you. I read from the CDC today. In 2015 and 16, over 11 million Americans were prescribed prescription medication, of which almost 1 million ended up taking heroin because of that. So this is a widespread problem. This is like countrywide. This is not, this isn't a white, black, Hispanic issue. This isn't a rich, poor. It's all over it's everyone. I mean, lawyers, police officers.
Neil lost his daughter.
Yep.
With all the money in the world,
Yep.
he wasn't able to save
Yep.
her. You know,
We've lost celebrities because of addiction.
definitely quite a few of them, haven't we?
Yes.
Jimi Hendrix,
Yep. Michael
Janis
Jackson.
Joplin.
Yep. Prince.
Prince. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was online, and you'd be surprised how many people, they said, the actors that people didn't know that passed on. And when you were looking at the statistics, a lot of them died from drug overdoses.
Because you know what it is, and I said it at the vigil, since in the 90s, about 500,000 people have died. Well, it may not be from the overdose. It could be from another medical ailment that was related, indirectly related to taking drugs, like heart conditions or your kidneys, your liver.
There's a lot of elderly that are addicted.
Yes.
You know, and that's another thing. A lot of people think it is just young people, but they're being prescribed drugs, and if they don't have people monitoring them or watching over them, what if they have dementia or something like that, and they could be taking more than their dose. So there have been elderly that have also overdosed. Yeah,
I think Governor Bacon signed a recent bill where physicians have to really be careful of prescribing meds, and they got a system in place to monitor that, which I think is good.
Yeah, I think
you got to oversee that. I mean,
the monitoring system's been around for a while because
but they haven't paid attention.
Right, where Frankie died in 2009, they were monitoring when he went into the hospital for the injury, another injury. Red flag saying that he had a problem with
they had a registry. They could tell where he was probably getting pills.
Right. So
and a lot of the addicts would go from emergency room to emergency room. That's how they were starting to catch them.
Fly down to Florida and go to 5 or 6 doctors and then come back.
Or, fake a toothache or have a tooth pulled so they could get. There's a lot of things they did to get the medication.
Right. I know. I've seen a lot of it.
And it's an addiction that is really, it's a scourge, because once that changes your brain chemistry, that's all you crave is your next high, your next drug.
You know, it was really funny. Well, actually it wasn't funny, but I had rotator cuff surgery, and they had given me Percocets, and I only took a quarter of it. It put me to sleep for 8 hours, right? And then after a while, it was like a half a pill, and then almost a whole pill. And then you go to the doctor and say, I need another prescription. And he said to me, this is very addictive. And then I said, you know what? Forget about it.
Good. At least he said that.
Right. He said that to me, and I said, you're right. Because that's a very painful surgery, and it's long-term before you get to use your arm like.
No, and I've kind of criticized doctors tonight, but not all doctors, because when I was young too, I had stomach issues, and it was all stress related, and I had, some procedures done, and the surgeon who did the procedure gave me pain medication, not pain medication, medication to help me sleep. So when I went back to my treating physician, I showed him the prescription. I hadn't filled it. He said, give it to me. He ripped it up. He said, you don't need that. Start exercising. So there are doctors, and there are many terrific doctors who understand this, and there are, unfortunately, some that don't. But the prescriptions need to stop, because that's where this whole epidemic took place. It started from that.
Also, your pain level. When did that
start? I know, 1 to 10. Who doesn't have an ounce of pain or something? I mean, I get plantar fasciitis on my left foot, so I'm limping along now. But you know, it says you get older, these are the medical maladies you have. You got to live with them.
That's true.
Someone has an ache somewhere. No one is exempt, so.
No, absolutely not.
And that's the problem. We've
The
become.
older we get, the more aches and pains we
But
acquire.
this goes to, well, go to the doctor, they'll give you a pill and you'll feel better. That doesn't work all the time. And the end result is, unfortunately, it can be addiction. That's why I say, please, if you get prescribed, if you do for any serious injury or whatever, be careful because you can't get addicted. And recreationally, I just recommend to anyone, don't even attempt to take that stuff recreationally because it's a slippery slope.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I would like to see more education in the schools. I think that right now it's minimal when it comes to addiction. I think they worry too much about.
Well, Tommy and his wife would be a perfect example of going into the schools. You know, someone who's been an addict, who's had issues, you know, and it's a disease. I mean, alcohol, drugs is the disease, and it's a battle every day. And
It's a battle for them.
someone said to me one time, what's the best treatment? And I said, I personally, in my years of working in the court, was a 12-step program. I had a lot of success with my clients, and when I said to them, go get a sponsor, be around healthy people, you know, work the steps. If you do it faithfully, it'll work. And because everyone would say to me, if their sons or cousins were having issues, what's the best treatment? I don't know, but eventually they need to get into a program with 12 steps with healthy people, and they got to get away from the crowd they were hanging with and doing all the
Right.
crazy stuff.
Well, you know, sometimes I've noticed that there are some, when you say 12 steps, now that's the religion, the higher power. And in the beginning, there are some people that are not interested in the higher power.
Right.
But eventually.
Your higher power
and-
can be anything you want, though.
Right, right. And I noticed that.
They do get it gets heavy with God. I believe in God,
I do
and I'm a
too.
Christian, but I can understand some people who get offended by that. But
Because they're really, when they're down,
yeah, they don't want to hear. But I would say, listen to what you want, and as they say, take the rest and leave it. Right. There may be one person there that you can identify with. Geez, that just sparks something. And then that's how you learn and you grow from that. And
so that's why I think that it's great that there are a lot of people that are in recovery, becoming counselors,
yes,
becoming recovery coaches.
they're the best experts. They're
Right.
the experts.
They are, because they've been there.
That's right.
And
Been
then
there and done
sometimes
that.
the person that's there will be more comfortable with someone that's been
Correct.
in the same situation.
Right.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me as a probation officer to say, well, you're an addict, you need treatment. You know, I wasn't an addict in that sense. You know, we all have our little addictions.
Right.
I like chips and ice cream, but I gotta watch it. But you're right. You can identify with someone who's walked in your shoes,
Right.
and it's easy for you to converse with them. And I agree. I think that's what you need. More people who've been in the gutter, who've really suffered, and you see how they've made a terrific comeback and are doing a lot better.
Right.
You can identify with that, and that becomes an inspiration.
Absolutely. So there is hope.
There's
You know, when
always
you
hope.
turn around and you see people like Matt Gannum, 12 years clean, and now he's a CEO for Banyan Treatment Center. He lived in the
There's
Boston
always
Common.
hope to your last breath
Right.
for everyone.
Same thing with Mike Duggan. Mike Duggan, he's with RCA, Recovery Center of America, but now he became a social worker, and now he's down in Florida working.
Mm-hmm.
So there's hope.
There is hope. Your body can recover. It takes time, depending on how long you did the drug or how long you drank or whatever you did.
Right.
The bodies are remarkable. It's remarkable. It will recover to the 100%. I'm not a physician. I don't know, but at least you can get back to where you can function
Right.
and have a normal life.
I think it's great. I've seen so many people that are doing well in recovery, and you know, I want to bring some of them more on
Should.
to talk about it. I mean, I have a lot of parents that come here and talk about what they do to be able to recover the loss. for the loss of their children. You know, we'll never totally recover, but I mean, this is one of my ways of dealing with my loss, is to be able to help other people.
It's your medication.
Right.
Helps you get through it.
This is my medication, right?
Yeah.
It helps me get through things by having people on the show and talking to them about anything. Whether it's a recovery center, what does your center do that is, you know?
By the way, I have to say, you're a real power example. You should be commended for what you have done.
Thank you.
A lot of the networking and a lot of stuff you've done for Somerville, I think you should be applauded for. And,
that's
you
very
need, you need a
nice.
lot of commendation, and I think keep up the good work.
I'm going to continue.
It's a battle. It's not easy, as you know.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster.
But you've done a terrific job to really get the word out there. And, you know, there are people out there, like at the vigil, those people are still suffering.
Definitely.
They're hurting.
Definitely. That's why I have this up here. There was a mother that said she was very disappointed that we didn't have the slideshow. But the thing is, it would never have stayed up. It was flying all over the place. You know, I mean, everything. Even my hair was out like this. It's so funny because when Jack Lynch was here the other day when we were at Somerville Media, the first thing that came out of his mouth was how I had mentioned, how do you look at my blown hair, you know, my blow-dried hair from the wind.
Well, I usually don't like to go back and watch what I say because I'm so, oh, did I say something crazy?
Yeah.
And I did, and I said, oh, look at my hair in the back. It was kind of flipping out. And I put that stuff to keep it down, but yeah, that was real windy.
It was really, really
Very
bad
windy.
because I really do feel that having the pictures of our loved ones at the vigil, and you know, I love Tommy Ross. This is our 7th vigil. What is it?
He's been there for every one.
It was our 6th. I'm pushing it. Yeah, but he's been there for 6 years.
And everyone who made the effort to come, you know, you commend the Alderman Jesse Klingon.
Oh yes, definitely.
Stephanie was there, Mayor Brune, Jack Conley,
Right.
Ben was there. So, yeah, that's what you need. You need more support from the community, the mayor and the alderman.
Well, and that was good because on August 30th we did have that because it was the day before lighting the city purple, and they had the purple flags up
Yep.
there. That's a milestone.
Yes.
It really is. So all we can do is improve.
Yep.
You know, work together.
Keep crawling, and then someday you're going to be walking. And
That's right. I
It's-
call it. We're a team.
Right.
Together, everyone accomplishes more or much, however you want to think
Yeah.
about it. That's why we wanted to have the Boston Common event, because people have to see the numbers of the
Right.
people that have lost their family members, and we're going to be doing that every year. you
good.
know, And I think
That's awareness. I mean, you see it on TV, how it's a crisis, an epidemic, but you see it firsthand. It happened to you and these other family members. They've lost loved ones. They're the ones who experience. And that's why you got to keep this going and the awareness. And again, I go back to, we got the best and brightest minds in this country. We got to figure out some solutions to kind of,
absolutely, I agree.
because we're losing a generation right now.
Yeah. Do you know in the in the state of Massachusetts, there's 37,000 grandparents raising their grandchildren?
Yep. I knew that
That's an
statistic.
awful
yeah.
huge number. And how many of those grandchildren were born addicted?
Yep.
And
Probably a substantial amount.
so now they have to look at how will the drugs affect their development.
Yep.
You know?
And they'll be more predisposed to becoming an addict because they were born an addict.
Right, especially if both parents were addicts.
Yes.
You know, and I feel for them because it's like some of them they won't know until they're fully developed all the stages of their years. You know, they won't have statistics or the
Statistics,
data
Yep.
for children born from addiction.
That's why marijuana, and I'm in the minority on this.
Okay.
I think it's a real slippery slope. Medicinal purposes, for medicinal uses, is fine. I have no problem. But for recreational, I just think that's not another. That's something we don't want to do. Unfortunately, it's already said and it's going to happen. And my fear is we're going to just have another lost generation. Now, people who smoke marijuana, do they become addicts? Technically, you can't get addicted to marijuana. However, you know, and I don't have hard facts, and statistics can't prove it.
Well, maybe next time you come on.
But alcohol and marijuana, in my estimation, were gateway drugs for
Right.
people to graduate to do other drugs. Now, I get scoffed at, I get laughed at. People say, that's not true. I've been smoking marijuana my whole life. I don't do heroin. I said, but people I've had on probation didn't start with marijuana. Didn't start with heroin. They started with marijuana. Everyone who smokes marijuana doesn't shoot heroin, but everyone who shoots heroin has smoked marijuana. That we know. Is there hard facts? No, but I think today where you can lace it with fentanyl, where the THC is a lot more potent.
Yeah, 25,
And if teenagers,
24% higher.
young people, young teenagers right up to their 20s start smoking at an early age, it does impact their brain chemistry and the growth of their brain. So, I mean, that's something we got to look at here. And hey, I'm just one person. I'm in the minority. I would, and I voted against it,
Right.
but I know
I voted against it too, only for the simple fact that I didn't like the whole entire bill. I don't think that there should be 12 marijuana plants in every house. You know, it's 6 in each apartment, but a total of 12. That's an awful lot of marijuana.
think
And
about
if you
it.
had it in everybody's,
yeah.
we would have no fresh air.
It's crazy. I look at it this way. You have roughly 200 Americans dying every day from drug overdoses. Why would you want to legalize another drug? Now, I mean, I certainly want, and I know they're going to police it. People are going to be driving. Now that the police are going to have to come up with mechanisms to determine if someone's driving high.
Right. We have only 2 minutes left. Imagine that, and our hour
It
is
went
up.
quick. It did go quick.
But the only thing I want to mention is that on 95 South, there was an accident. And the 2 people that were driving in one car had to be Narcaned. So now you have a lot of people driving
Right.
and
Under the-
overdosing
Yep.
as well.
Yes.
And that is quite scary.
It's scary. Yep.
It's amazing. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's like a loaded gun at that point.
That's why I think it's a slippery slope legalizing another drug, because you're going to have a whole other series of issues that we're going to address, and that's going to be from adolescents to teens, you know, more people under the influence of marijuana driving, other accidents maybe with, you know, other personnel in other areas flying or trains.
Terrible. And then people driving with kids in the car.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to say.
I don't have the answers, and I certainly don't think.
Neither do I. All we
But
can do is
I want to
discuss
commend
it.
you again. You really deserve a lot of credit for all the good work you do in the community, so thank you. And I will have the judge come on in January, and I'll come on.
Very good. I would love that because she changed my whole mind about
There is hope.
there is hope. And when I went in there, I went, oh my goodness. You even come over and gave me a hug, and I went, oh my God, is this allowed? You know what I mean? And
It's a love course.
oh, she was excellent.
Yeah.
I loved her, and I had a smile the whole time I was
She's a
in her
terrific
court.
person, and she's done terrific work in the Cambridge court.
I'm very proud of her. And we're about to stop in like 30 seconds. So I want to thank you.
It's always
and I
a pleasure.
commend you for all the work that
Always a
you've
pleasure.
done.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure coming on all the time.
And you know, it's amazing that I didn't get to know what you were doing until you almost retired. I would love to have gone and visited. And I will do it again, usually during like my vacation time or
Let me know. I'll
my
go over
summer.
with
I
you.
would love to go
Okay.
back. I tell everybody all about her and the court system and the homeless court. I was very impressed.
It works.
Yes, it does. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you so much. We're still
that
on.
Went,
Huh?
That went quick, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I like putting the green screen down and putting up pictures.
Yeah, that's good.
I was actually looking for
Broadcasters with
court pictures, and I said, no, he's retired now.
Oh, me?
No, just having the courtroom saying. There was one that actually looked like the Cambridge courts.
Really?
Yes, and I said, I should put that on there. But maybe next time when she comes, we'll do it.
No topics, and we just flew by time.
That's right. And well, we had our own, you know, mindset of what we would like to talk about, and that's what I wanted you to do, because you have so much knowledge. And a lot of people should know about the court system and how it really works and how many people are in there. And they do know, but unless they hear it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I say, they always have these, like Channel 5, 7, they always do these little 5-minute segments on addiction. And it's like, okay, let's turn it off.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we need to talk about it more and more and more. Right.
Or drug court, either one.
Did you know that I went to a Learn to Cope seminar, and they had 2 DEA agents there, and those DEA agents do not work for the government anymore, because they were actually clamping down on some of the facilities down in Florida. And one of them was,
Who's this money?
right, 3 million pills were going out of that small little facility, right? And they were ready to go in and, you know, and Obama, I'm a Democrat. Obama turned around and put out a bill, and it was unanimous between all the congressmen and the Senate. They agreed to not give the DEA agents the power to go in and do that. And I think that's a big mistake.
Big mistake.
You know, and they talked about it.
Abetted the addiction.
That's right, and they actually wrote a book about it. I haven't looked it up yet, and I would like to. We have to read a little bit more. But we'll have to take a picture. We'll get Zoe to come in and take a picture of us. Because I don't have Judy. She's good at
Judy,
research.
yeah.
But, you know,
She does
maybe
the
eventually she might.
I kept getting texts the whole night, too.
Hey, Stuart, how about taking a picture of us? And if you could always come in and take a picture with us. He does such great work for me. I love it. I always say, can we do this? We do it.
Did you watch